And if we time it right, we should make it before lunch." Patricia beamed. Darian sighed. She'd left no wiggle room in their trip, no time for delays or the unexpected. The odds were good that they'd stay on schedule, but he didn't want to tempt Murphy to tag along. There was no space left for anything else. Every corner, wall, nook, and cranny had been filled with a variety of important things. And it was still a lonely, cold place. A heart with no room for love is a sad thing indeed. "Life isn't all fun and fluff, you know," Della snapped. "It's not all doom and gloom, either," Hillary retorted. Sam rolled his eyes. If there was one thing his twins could agree on, it was arguing. They were both good at it. He wondered which one would become a lawyer. Isabel stepped into the sunshine of the world above, blinded by so many hours spent in the darkness below. She'd accepted her friend and mentor's name, knowing the noble house's legacy, and she would endeavor to make him proud. So many emotions, so many memories and thoughts and regrets that threatened to drown him in a river of pain. He could still hold his head above these waters as they washed over him, but it was getting harder to stave off the melancholy that came afterwards. "Hey, beautiful angel. Hey, handsome devil." She never got tired of that familiar exchange. They said it during morning snuggles, in text messages, and in random moments. As she laid a rose on his casket and said goodbye to him, she wished she could hear it one last time. At first, he'd written it off as a random encounter, a short-lived fling that he would forget about in a few days. Then he found the strange little doll under the bed, its hair and eyes eerily similar to hers. The doll winked at him, and he screamed when it bit his hand. The young man stepped back, admiring his handiwork. "Not too shoddy," he said aloud. He looked over the room. With the window bars in place and the furniture set up, it felt cozy, secure. He'd check the soundproofing later. Couldn't have anyone hearing the screams. "They were mean to me. Why were they mean to me, Mommy?" Emily looked at her sweet, kind-hearted son. Tears glistened at the edges of his eyes. Caleb felt things like this so deeply. She wondered if he was an empath like his father, and how his powers would manifest. Veronica took her seat on the plane, the mad scramble to gather her gear and passport completed. Another artifact, another adventure. "Good afternoon, Miss Chandler," she heard a familiar voice say. How had he found out? And how had he known which flight she'd taken? "It would certainly take a load off my mind if you would agree," the old man said, his voice harboring a mix of intents. Julia narrowed her eyes. He might not value his own soul, but she was quite fond of hers, and she wasn't about to make a trade to save her own skin. Their partnership was like a tendon connecting muscle to bone. He was the hard-headed one, immovable on most occasions and solid. She was the strong yet soft one, pliable to a point when needed and flexible to change. This new case would test that connection, and much more. It felt like standing on the edge of a precipice and staring down into dark, uncharted water. There was no dipping of toes, no wading in. It was take the plunge or leave the cliff. Now or never, she said to herself. She took a running leap and swan dived over the edge. Well, well, your majesty. Imagine us meeting like this, the usurper crowed. Surrounded by the corpses of your court as I claim your throne. The queen glared at him, refusing to cower before this monster. In the shadows, her bloodied spy master made ready to strike. Lenara gritted her teeth. How could a scratch hurt so much? Was there more to it than she thought? She pulled back her cloak to examine the wound, and her blood chilled in her veins. It was just a scratch, all right, but the werewolf's claws had cut deep. The rage and anger hit her like a fiery dart, instant in its appearance and hot in its fury. It didn't make sense. This came out of nowhere and consumed her for longer than she liked. She reached for her journal, making notes, just in case. What if it happened again? He looked at the photo, folded in half. The crease made a perfect division down the middle of the subject's face. This was a clue, wasn't it, love? He mused sadly. The duality of your broken mind. He reached over and took her hand, body and blood cooling fast. Yes, Lady Marthin said, beaming. He pulled her to him, the fabric of her gown rustling softly. His hand slipped around her waist, and she froze. What if we're caught? I'm a prince, darling. It won't matter. She grinned against his lips before returning his kiss. Simon placed the worn key in the brass lock. All these years, waiting to find out what secrets his father's laboratory held, the one room in the manor the good doctor never let his son enter. He reached out to rotate the key, but something else did the work for him.